Muy again. Our Bible reading for tonight is from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 9, verses 23 to 25. Then he said to them all, "If anyone wants to become my follower, he must deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life because of me will save it. For what does it benefit a person if he gains the whole world but loses or forfeits himself?" Now when these days drew near for him to be taken up, Jesus set out resolutely to go to Jerusalem. As they were walking along the road, someone said to him, "I will follow you wherever you go." Jesus said to him, "Foxes have dens and the birds of the sky have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head." Jesus said to another, "Follow me." But he replied, "Lord, first let me go and bury my father." But Jesus said to him, "Let the dead bury their own dead. As for you, go and proclaim the kingdom of God." Yet another said, "I will follow you, Lord, but first let me say goodbye to my family." Jesus said to him, "No one who puts his hand to the plough and looks back is fit for the kingdom of God."
Thank you, Ryan. How's everyone? Very tall person was here before me. I'm short. Hope everybody's well. I don't know how this cold weather happened, but I'm quite glad of it. Those of you who don't know me, I'm Denise. I'm the pastor here. Love to meet you if I haven't met you already. I have face blindness, so sometimes I meet you and then you're like a new person the next week. So just, bear with me if I get that wrong. My goal in 2025 was to run 200 kilometres over the course of the year. And I did it. So sometimes I did that on my treadmill. Sometimes there are fire trails near my house, so sometimes I'd go run out there. An occasional park run, park brisk walk, because I can't run 5Ks in a row. In the second last week of December, on my treadmill at home alone, I watched the final kilometre click over. And I have to say, I tried really hard to get a treadmill here tonight, and Phil was going to run on the treadmill the entire time of the sermon. But I just couldn't figure out how to get the treadmill here. So if you could maybe imagine in your head, Phil's just running. One day we'll do it. I saw that final kilometre click over on my treadmill and I went, "Yay!" And that was it. No confetti cannons went off. Nobody gave me a medal. I was proud of myself for having achieved this goal. But the feeling of satisfaction lasted, maybe 5 minutes. And then I went and I got my calendar out and I turned over the calendar page and I started planning my 2026 running goal. So it's kind of an anticlimax. But I'm okay with that feeling of anticlimax. In fact, I was even expecting it because I have worked out from previous years that it's actually not the destination that matters so much as the actual journey. The real benefits of setting a goal like that comes from the long process of getting there, not the actual finish line. And even if I never made it to the destination, which has happened some years, I benefit from that discipline of plodding, the persistence, the mornings when I drag myself out of bed. I really don't want to do this, but I'm behind on my kilometres, so I have to get up. It's the journey that shaped me, not the finish line. As you know, the book of Acts is known for its journeys. Or maybe you didn't know that. If you were here last week, you know that. And over the next months, we're going to be delving into the book of Acts. And some sermons will be looking at various stories or themes in the book of Acts. Other weeks we'll leave Acts and we'll explore some topics that you've asked for in the end of year survey. There's a monthly online group that meets on the first Tuesday of the month, and that's focused on Acts. The 2 Wednesday groups, they're also spending some time in Acts. Lots of Acts things happening. Whether you're part of a small group or not, you're invited to read through Acts with us together, 1 chapter per week. So this week, in case you missed it, was Acts chapter 1. Maybe you want to catch up. We'll be reading Acts chapter 2 this week. And there's a Slack channel called What Happened to Matthias? Reference last week's sermon as well, why it's called What Happened to Matthias. And the monthly online group is using that Slack channel to kind of chat about Acts. But anyone can join that channel and you can post insights or resources or questions about Acts. So feel free to do that. I also had this thought bubble last week, and that has now turned into a thing. So it is now the MCC Count the Journey project. Let me tell you how this works. This is to help us live out the journey theme in Acts, just kind of a fun thing to do. The whole church is invited to track how far we can walk, run, wheel, rollerblade, swim, climb, or paddle together. Here's how it works. You do any active movement with someone else connected to MCC. You could do a pre-church Sunday stroll around the block, or meet somebody at your local pool and go for a swim. Maybe you want to organise a Saturday hike, or a walk and talk Bible study instead of your usual sit and chat. If you are joining us from far away, you can still participate. You can head out at the same time as somebody else at MCC, and you can connect by phone or by text while you move. For people with limited mobility, gentle movement also counts, like wheeling short distances or using a walker or doing some seated movement with a partner. So I reckon 10 minutes of that equals 1 kilometre. So there you go. Your distance, however, your distance only counts if you do the activity with at least one person from the congregation who doesn't live in your household. So if you're Christine and Peter and you go for a walk every morning, you have to find somebody else for that to count, all right? Oh, wow, okay, getting some little pushback there. Come talk to me later if you want to disagree with that. The distances multiplied by the number of participants. So if 3 people walk 2 Ks together, that's 6 Ks. Does that make sense? No trains, planes or automobiles. Now, somebody posted on Slack last week that they had done 90 kilometres at the Laneway Festival, and I'm like, you walked 90 kilometres? Anyway, I'm a little bit suspicious about that. But look, it's not about the rules, so whatever. But technically we are counting human-powered movement. Human-powered movement. You can then add your shared kilometres and how you did them. I biked, I swam, I whatever, rollerbladed, to the Slack channel. Count your, what is it called? Count the journey kilometres. That is what the Slack channel's called. Count the journey kilometres. Or if you're not on Slack and don't want to be, you can send them to info@mccbrisbanechurch.org. And our very own Matthew Shields is going to count these kilometres for us. A round of applause for Matthew. Kilometres will be converted because we can't count somebody's going on this 90 kilometre bike ride with somebody who's doing a 5K walk. So, 1K walk equals 4Ks. Wait. Yes, a 4K bike ride would equal 1K of walking. 1K of swimming equals a 4K walk. Anyway, there's some conversions that'll happen. You don't need to worry about that. Maybe you're thinking, well, this all sounds well and good, but I don't really know anybody. So I'm sort of out of this. And I can't just randomly go up to somebody at supper and say, hey, do you want to go for a walk? I mean, maybe that feels a bit weird. Oh, some people would do it, and that's all good. So watch for opportunities to join a group activity. Can I go back? What will happen? You can join the Queer Fashion group outing that's coming up, because they're going to be walking around Queensland Museum. I reckon everyone will probably do okay. So if 10 people do that, there we have it. In March, there is going to be a ferry ride and a wander around South Bank. So, if you join a group activity, that's a way of contributing to the kilometres, but also getting to know people that you might not get to know otherwise. So watch for invitations on Slack and in the newsletter. And if you're planning on going on a Saturday afternoon walk and you're going alone and you feel like some company, why don't you post it on Slack? And who knows, somebody might be in the area, got nothing to do, and feel like coming for a walk with you. Now, I mentioned last week, let's move on from that Acts is actually the second volume of a 2-volume work. Do you remember the other volume, part 1? It's the Gospel of Luke, yes. So the same author who wrote the Gospel of Luke also wrote the book of Acts. Not only are there lots of journeys in Acts, which is of course where this journey theme is coming from, there's also a very significant journey in the Gospel of Luke. I mentioned it last week, but I want to unpack that a bit more, because this is the sort of thing that makes biblical studies so interesting. This is the stuff that gets me up in the morning, as well as my treadmill. Take a look at this. Last week, I showed you one way of looking at the structure of the book of Acts. I said that Acts... Oh, look, there's... Wow. I must have been going backwards. There we go. Last week I said that the verse, Acts chapter 1, verse 8, kind of provides a table of contents for the rest of the book. You will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, in all Judea and Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. And these 3 geographical regions shape the flow of the whole story. So chapters 1 to 7, the disciples witnessed to Jesus in Jerusalem. Chapters 8 to 12, they witness to Jesus in Samaria and Judea. And chapters 13 to 28, they, mostly Paul, to be honest, and a few of his co-workers, they witnessed to Jesus all the way to Rome. And there we leave him. So Jesus' ministry in Luke's Gospel can also be divided into 3 geographical sections. There is chapters 4 to 9, Jesus is in Galilee, ministering in Galilee. In chapters, very specifically, 9:51 to the end of chapter 19, Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem. And then finally, chapters 20 to 24, Jesus is in Jerusalem. You see, there's this geographical thing going on in Luke as well. It's this middle section that is so interesting. Scholars call it the travel narrative, because it's the section where Jesus and his disciples travel from Galilee to Jerusalem. And it starts in chapter 9, verse 51. And Ryan read that verse to us just a while ago. So Jesus sets his face to go to Jerusalem. That's what it literally says. I think that the verse said something about Jesus resolutely did something. He decided resolutely to go to Jerusalem. But if you want to do like a really, really literal translation of the Greek, it's Jesus set his face towards Jerusalem. Can you feel that resolution? He set his face. He's very determined. He's very resolute. He's tenacious about this decision of going to Jerusalem. He's made this decision to go. Nothing's going to stop him. Well, Jerusalem is only a 3-day walk from Galilee. You should be able to get there in 3 days. But it takes Jesus and his disciples 10 chapters to get there. Did they get lost? I don't know. They get to Jerusalem late in chapter 19. Now in Mark's Gospel, we hear this same sort of journey. Jesus and his disciples go from Galilee to Jerusalem. You know how long it takes them? 2 chapters. 2 chapters in Mark, 10 chapters in Luke. What's going on? Why does Luke take 10 chapters to tell us about a 3-day journey? What's more, if you try and map out the journey on a map, you can't do it. Unlike the journeys in the book of Acts, where the towns and cities are very clearly named, in Luke's telling of Jesus' journey, you get things like, as they were on their way, they entered a certain village. Jesus was praying in a certain place. Crowds follow him, but we're never told where they're from. But Luke keeps reminding us that Jesus is still on his way to Jerusalem with his disciples in tow. In fact, he reminds us that they are on this journey 14 times in that 10 chapters. Even though we can't track this geographical journey, Luke really wants to emphasise that they are on a journey. What is this about? Well, what happens on the journey? Well, Jesus teaches his disciples. He teaches the crowds too, who begin to follow him. He faces opposition from opponents. They're critical of who he's hanging out with. And they also disagree with the way that he's interpreting the scriptures. He tells some parables like the Good Samaritan, banquet parables, parables about losing lost things and lost people, the rich man and Lazarus, the unjust manager, that's a weird one, the unjust judge and the widow, the Pharisee and the tax collector, a whole bunch of parables. And actually all of those parables are only ever found in Luke. He teaches them the Lord's Prayer. We meet a rich ruler and we hear about children coming to Jesus. So he teaches his way on the way. He also predicts that suffering, arrest, ill treatment and execution are waiting for him in Jerusalem, the place where he's set his face to go. He knows that this is coming. And yet it doesn't seem to dissuade him from heading there. He's prepared to walk through suffering, to face hard times ahead. He knows that resurrection is on the other side, or at least he certainly has faith that it is. Resurrection comes after the suffering and the death, because how could it be any other way? And he's prepared to walk through the suffering and the death to get to the resurrection. He's basically saying, if you want to follow me, this is the way to do it. And by the way, it's not going to be easy. Following Jesus isn't about learning religious curriculum in a classroom. It's about learning on the way. It's about learning on the road. As you live your life, as you get up on Monday morning and do whatever it is that you do in your week, you learn how to follow Jesus through all the things that happen to you, all the experiences as you go through your everyday journey through life. You learn how to follow Jesus as you come across difficult people and difficult situations, as you're faced with difficult decisions to make. That's how you learn how to follow Jesus. And that journey continues until the day you die. And just by the way, there's going to be suffering along the way, most likely, and you're going to have to decide how to handle that. Will it deter you from following the way of Jesus? Will you turn back when it gets hard? Or will you set your face to Jerusalem and follow Jesus through whatever suffering you find yourself experiencing? I kind of wonder if Luke has stretched out this journey to Jerusalem to show that it's on the road, it's on the way, that our character and who we are is formed and transformed. becoming more fully human, more like Jesus, that comes through plodding one step at a time behind Jesus along this long and winding road. And just as the journey in Luke is more than just a geographical journey going from one place to another, the journey in Acts, or the journeys in Acts, they're not just journeys from one place to another either. The journey in Luke, it's difficult to map, but the journey in Acts is quite the opposite. You can trace the movements of Peter and John and Philip and Paul and Barnabas. You can trace their movements on a map very easily. By the end of the book of Acts, you can trace that the gospel has travelled from Jerusalem, the centre of Jewish power, to Rome, the centre of Gentile power. Even so, it's still not the destination, but the journey that's important in Acts. It's important that the gospel made it to Rome, but it's what happened on the way that Luke really wants us to pay attention to. And when you look at the movement of the gospel from Jerusalem to Rome, all sorts of things propel that gospel, a whole mix of things. There's persecution that scatters believers into new places. They wouldn't have gone there if it hadn't have happened. There's logistical decision making. They decide, we're going to stick to the urban centres. There's community discernment. It seemed good to us and the Holy Spirit that we should do this. There's conflict from within and conflict from outside, and very, very occasionally, just occasionally, there's direct divine intervention. It doesn't happen very often. Just as the disciples who followed Jesus were shaped by the journey, so the church is shaped by the journeys in the book of Acts. And these journeys, they often pass through suffering. There are beatings, there are imprisonments, there are riots, storms, shipwrecks, everything but dinosaurs. I wonder if you've heard this. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Except for bears. Bears will kill you. What doesn't kill you may make you stronger, or it may leave you permanently disfigured, or leave you with PTSD. What doesn't kill you can give you an awful lot of unhealthy coping strategies and a really dark sense of humour. But what doesn't kill you can shape your character in surprising ways. The reality of whether suffering makes us stronger or leaves us weaker is really complicated, and such an important topic that next week I'm going to talk about 5 easy steps to handle suffering. So that should be fun, shouldn't it? Come next week. 5 easy steps to handle suffering. Come next week because we're also having a baptism. We're going to be celebrating Duke's journey of faith and where that's taken him. Our journey of life and faith and following Jesus through life and faith will inevitably involve suffering. Suffering is simply a part of being human. And also joy. That's a part of being human too. There's also joy in the journeys in Luke and in Acts. New communities form, unlikely friendships develop, prison doors are opened, and walls are broken down. And through it all, there's this deep sense that somehow everything will be okay. So Luke and Acts together, they paint a picture of Christian life as a road that's sometimes clear and sometimes kind of meandering, sometimes joyful and sometimes marked by suffering. But always transformation happens not when we get to the finish line, but in the steps along the way. Destinations matter, but it's the journey that shapes us.